Okay, guys, and welcome to the part 2 of learning capability of lecture 3 of supply chain management. So now we're going to be continuing finishing our last few slides on learning capability. So in the last video, I discussed about single loop versus double loop learning by using the example of a 20 degrees greenhouse temperature control problem. If I want to solve it in the just by tackling its symptom, I can just use a boiler and it will basically heat up the temperature to 20 degrees from 10 degrees. But if I really want to fix this problem in the long term and save some cost, I should close my window, which is a problem that caused the temperature to fluctuate. So that was an example of either I tackle the symptoms through a single loop learning, or I tackle the root cause and I fix the root causes through a double loop learning. So in managerial problem solving, basically we have to decide whether eliminating symptom is enough, or we have to actually eliminate the root cause. Because I mentioned before, there's no definite answer on whether double loop learning is just better. From the last example on greenhouse gas, maybe really double loop learning is the case, but it's not really working for all cases in businesses. So we need to try to see if when we rectify, we try to see if single loop corrective measure is enough, then we just tackle the symptom. If not enough, we should use double loop learning to see the symptom and tackle the causes, and try to implement strategies and techniques to fix the causes to solve the symptoms and diminish these consequences caused by the symptom. So, okay, now we finished about our kind of a first introduction to understand single loop and double loop learning, and now we're up to learning dynamics. So basically I'm going to introduce to you this learning propensity model. So propensity basically refers to an inclination to do something. Basically, I'll say the inclination to learn. And basically, you see this diagram, there is also related to single and double loop learning. So single loop learning is basically really easy. This is a red part, red cycle right here. Basically, your task as a manager is to reinforce the learning cycle, so you keep learning, and try to renew your cycle. But then a double loop learning, which is a learning that's more detailed, requires more different processes involved. So we first of all start with the top manager and infrastructure, logistics, and product mix. And when it goes to learning propensity, middle manager have to handle the task, and they should have the learning intention, and bias should be induced. And then also in the system objectives, we need to try to reduce the cost, try to reduce the lead time, and increase product quality. And basically, after we implement this kind of a learning, we need to see how effective is it. So we have to observe the effectiveness of learning mechanism, and we have to then realize effectiveness and see if we need any changes. So it's a bit similar to a cause and effect study, but this is more of a single loop learning, because we'll determine all the factors that cause a problem. We need to coordinate our managers to solve this problem. We have to perceive the effectiveness once we implement certain strategies, and then we have to really realize and evaluate this effectiveness later on. But if the problem is not severe, it only requires a small change, or the change does not really affect in the long run, we can just start a reinforced learning cycle, which is kind of more like a single loop learning, when we tackle the problem right away by solving the symptom, rather than we're using those top management and use a lot of personnel and see whether each one works doing a cause and effect. So that's more about double loop learning. And you see the green box below talks about optimal dynamics. Basically, is the managerial attention and resource allocation that is focused on the accumulation of experience derived from intentional learning, systemized knowledge. So basically, after we systemize, analyze the data using maybe statistical methods or different technologies or other different kind of methods, we need to kind of evaluate our strategies, whether it's or evaluate the new system or other stuff that we changed. Then we have to complete this learning induced bias, internal versus external. So we have to reduce bias involved in this learning process. So how do I reduce the bias? Bias is explained quite straightforward, because since there's internal and external learning required, we can do both internal kind of a reinforce or internal improvement process, but externally we can do product benchmarking or process benchmarking. Benchmarking is a little bit like imitation, because benchmarking is really like how we evaluate our strategies and our actions against those of successful companies. So we maybe can perceive those successful companies in the market doing producing the same products as ours, or have similar production processes as supply chain. We see how they are coping with different systems, coping with different strategies, and we can benchmark and evaluate our strategies with them. If we are too much different, maybe we cannot success. We need to copy a bit from external companies, copy from other companies in the market. So basically, when we learn, we always learn from internal and external. So basically, we have to make copies when necessary, because if you only keep what you're doing, you thinking will be successful, it may not work in the market. So case studies on existing companies, benchmarking, making copies of external companies is really important in learning of the supply chain and all the learning required in your business work. So remember, internal and external learning capability are required to be developed. Now let's discuss what is learning organization. So an organization which learns constantly is a learning organization. So this is the goal of you want to achieve for your business. You always want your business to be identified as a learning organization, because only if you have this learning capability, this constant kind of ongoing process, you're going to keep making improvements in your business and in your supply chain. So a learning organization is a business skill at creating, acquiring, transferring knowledge, and modifying its behavior to reflect new knowledge and insight. So basically, when we learn, after we gather or acquire knowledge, which is a learning process, we have to transfer then either for further learning. Maybe we first analyze how the system works, and we conduct further learning on how the system can help automation to do manufacturing. But sometimes learning is just how we acquire, how we can directly apply this learning. For example, when we learn from other businesses how they cope with this logistic process, we might just copy theirs and implement into ours to see if there's a result. So a learning organization basically acquires knowledge, creates this knowledge from its own analysis, and then it modifies behaviors, business activities, business processes to reflect new knowledge and insight from what they learn, either through multi-layers learning, or applying existing knowledge gained and learning into business practices. Organization learning means a process of improving actions through better knowledge and understanding. So I think this is quite straightforward, because our goal is basically to make improvements when we complete learning. Okay, this is a last section on learning capability. We'll discuss about learning organization for supply chain management. So the building blocks for learning organizations include systematic problem solving. So when we identify a problem, conduct maybe trial and error, conduct a experimentation, or conduct kind of a statistical analysis, we need to have systematic problem solving analysis skill, because we have to analyze in a systematic way, maybe through statistics that display whether this works or not, because we have to get a bit more technical when we do analysis. Otherwise, we're not going to perceive, and not going to understand whether this change works, whether this process works, whether this new technology, whether this new system actually works in the market. And then we have to do experimentation with new approaches. This is kind of like, it can be trial and error. This is basically trial and error and basically I'll say simulation, because before you implement a system, you are not sure whether it will work or not, so you cannot start to manufacture or start to actually implement the system right away. But you have to do some kind of experimentation, maybe with a small group of people, with a small amount of resources, to see whether it works or not before you implement it. So this is basically the important part called experimentation and stimulation. Then after that, we always learn from own experiences and past history. This means our business activities in the past, whether we succeed or not, we learn from our mistakes. Then from the experiences or experimentation, we're actually also learning for ourselves, because experimentation is to be conducted internally inside the business. But only doing experimentation, first of all, is not enough, because sometimes we don't gather those useful and valuable knowledge from other successful businesses, and moreover, sometimes experimentation can be time-consuming, can be costly, can be not cost-effective. So we also learn from experiences and best practices of other businesses in the market. So other than learning from experimentation, learning for yourself, learning from your own experience, learning from your mistakes made from the past, we also try to learn from the experiences and how other businesses are coping with different situations, how other businesses are managing the supply chain. So it's really important to not learn from ourselves as well, but also learn from others. Then the last building block is the ability, the capability to be able to transfer knowledge quickly and efficiently throughout the organization. Efficiently may refer to how this knowledge can take effects, which may require more employee training, maybe require more employees orientation, team building activities, or maybe requires high and effective communication within the company. How effective can you communicate to your employees? How much can they understand? Can they understand really fast in a few minutes, or they understand very slowly, which is kind of a delayed process? So you have to increase efficiency. So in this case, you may have to discuss with your human resources team or human resources manager to find out how can we think in this knowledge we just perceive or we just learn from ourselves or others quickly into the brains of the employees, so they can basically understand this knowledge and develop better practices along with the knowledge improvement. So employees is a kind of a key building block in organizational learning. And then we have to transfer to see the effects. Effects can be more customer loyalty, can be higher market share, can be increased profitability, revenue, decrease of risk, increase of controllability or flexibility. So you have to see actual transfer. You're going to see basically the benefits, but the benefits can come either short run or long run. It can come very slowly, it can come very fast. The manager have to make certain decisions, they have to invest, and they have to make sure they look for the long return rather than kind of a short-term cash flow inflow into the business. Then, now lastly, the last slide I'm going through in the learning capability lecture is the stages of learning. So the first stage is cognitive learning, which is include members of the organization exposed to new ideas, expand their knowledge, and begin to think differently. So basically, this is a part that members actually got the idea. This part can be difficult, but it's also the basic step because employees are not really putting the knowledge into practices. But once, if you as a manager or you are working with the HR or you are the HR, if you are able to cognitively input the knowledge into your members of the organization successfully, which means members are learn really deeply related to knowledge, you are actually successful. Because once employees understand the knowledge better and they really went deeper into this knowledge, there's a higher chance of them be able to implement this knowledge more effectively. So the second stage is behavioral. So employees begin to internalize new insights and alter their behavior, which is the stage they start to take actions. And lastly is performance improvement, which means the changes in behavior lead to measurable improvement in results. Basically, after they take actions, how can they use this knowledge to improve, actually make improvements after they take actions, because actions can either have improvement or not. Let's take a really simple example. When we learn, if we work really hard, we write every day, it might not take effect because we need to have a smart learning strategy, have a smart learning ideas, smart learning master in order to get a good grade for school. It's not only about just taking action. Sometimes only taking action don't really give you any benefits. So you have to actually implement this knowledge in a really high level, in a high tier way, effectively in order to change the behavior, lead to measurable improvements actually to be seen inside a business, including better quality, better delivery, lead time, increased market share, and more effective manufacturing, more effective kind of a marketing, something like that as well. Okay, so that's all about learning capability, this third lecture. So this lecture is broken down into two videos. So first one is 25 minutes. I'm not sure how long this one is, but let's have a brief recap on what we went through. So first of all, we went through about why learning is important. We actually gave a really kind of a universal definition of learning, and then we talked about learning operations, learning the processes include try and error, systemization, gaining knowledge, analyze the knowledge, and kind of systemize and analyze the results. Then we also talked about how we learn from building different equations with different coefficients. A really fundamental one is just take sales, promotion, and advertisement to see how effective are they on building up our revenues and profits of our business. Then we see a more complex one, which I suggest. Definitely my lecture is not enough because I'm not really expert in statistics, but if you want to go deeper, you definitely can learn more in statistic courses, or you can actually read some books, take some courses in Coursera or online related to statistics. Then we went through the cause and effect analysis. It's a basic logical idea I'm giving you, but cause and effect can be a really broad one. This one is about a cause and effect of a basic action of a business, but cause and effect can also happen in system cause and effect, like your new system, new website. It can be a new website, can be new manufacturing process. If I implement this, what does it affect? Will manufacturing get faster? Will it be more accurate? Will I require more electricity? Will I be able to reduce my mistakes? So that's more about cause and effect. And then we talked about single loop and double loop learning with a basic example, and we found out that double loop means when we tackle the root cause, and single loop is when we tackle the symptoms right away. And I mentioned before, it really depends on what the problem is. There's no definite answer on whether which one is better, but definitely on the long run, most businesses really apply double loop learning to tackle kind of a fundamental root causes. But then if it's a short time, you can just tackle the symptoms if you don't feel like it is necessary to do a double loop analysis. Then we talk about what is a learning organization. And lastly, we went through the building blocks and the stages of learning in an organization. Okay guys, so this is pretty much the video today. I think what your takeaway from this video is that before, learning can be just a process that you think you are doing in school every day, learning for textbook, but actually you might also see many businessmen haven't completed their university degrees like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. But in the enterprise, learning is definitely really important, no matter you are in a supply chain, no matter you are in the IT department, whether you're marketing department, whether you're a manager or just an employee, you have to be constantly learning to increase your behaviors, to increase, improve, enhance your own performance and performance of the organization. So hope you like this video today. In the next video, I'm going to be going through quality. So we're going to go through this broad concept of quality, maybe through 1 or 2 videos. And stay tuned for the new video. And if you have any questions, please comment below. I want to hear your ideas. Okay, thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.